Ms. Sucheta Dalal, who is one of the best-known financial journalists in India and also the founder trustee of Moneylife Foundation and the managing editor of Moneylife magazine. Ms. Dalal has worked with some of India's leading newspapers, including Business Standard, The Times of India, Economic Times, and Indian Express. Her career of over 25 years of outstanding investigative journalism spans the Harshad Mehta scam, C.R. Bansali scam, and exposure of Enron, bad loan in banks, numerous corporate frauds, and regulatory lapses. May I now invite Ms. Dalal to begin the session.
Thanks for coming here. We're doing a session especially for women after a really long time. Question is, why do we need a special session for women? I think all of us who like to think of ourselves as feminists would ask this question, right? I mean, what is different about financial literacy for women, and why do they need to have a separate program? I mean, I definitely used to be one of the people thinking that too, okay? And then we sort of started Moneylife in 2006, and I found that every few months, one of my colleagues would come and ask a question which was so horrendous that we would get taken aback and say, do you even listen to what we say week after week right here, where all of you have the right to come and attend? And you know, these are small mistakes that happen because of our social conditioning, how we have been brought up to think, and don't think it doesn't happen to people like you and me, okay? We are all educated, but when it comes to some core decisions, we have not done what we ought to, okay? So when I say how does it start, it starts with the fact that too many of us have been brought up to think we don't understand finance, okay? Which is not very true. We have this little board out here, I don't know if any of you saw it, but we say women actually make better investors. And if women believe that they can invest, but this is not even about investment, okay? We are talking about financial mistakes and what you should do to keep your financial life safe. So, I mean, let's just change our mindset. If we get down to it, we are going to be better investors than the guys, okay? So they better watch out. But we are not even going there. We are looking at what we're going to do with our money and how to keep it safe. Yet most women, and I'm sure there'll be some in this room, but any group of women that you meet, they will say that they can't bring themselves to ask their husbands what is happening about the money. A lot of them assume that the husband knows what he's doing, because guys always sound confident, and they don't. So they sit there and watch them making mistakes, and they can't say anything. We've had seminars sometimes on, you know, Ponzi schemes and MLMs, and there are women I know, really smart women. This is especially a friend of mine who's an architect, whose husband has got completely caught up in QNet. And you know, I tell her, what are you doing? Aren't you warning him? And she says, I'm earning my money. I can't tell him. He won't listen. So I think, you know, we women have to take interest, because it's not about our money alone. Ultimately, women are, you know, the focal point of what happens in a family. And I think you have to take interest. There are women who are single, who go and give their paychecks to their father and say he's going to manage it, and they take pride in the fact that I don't worry about money, okay? I don't look at money. I don't know what happens. My father does everything for me, or my husband does everything for me. I mean, these are smart professional women who are taking decisions, you know, involving millions of rupees in their work, but when it comes to their personal salary, they say someone else is looking at it, right? Decisions by other people who are managing your money affect your life. And at the end of the day, this statistic is really important, which is that women by and large outlive their husbands by 5 to 7 years. And in a lot of sessions where we talk about wills, we tell husbands, take the responsibility. If you want to provide for your family, make sure that you made a will, make sure that your wife is taken care of, because she is going to outlive you. And it is not just a question of outliving. You have to then live on savings, and it can be a long time. 5 to 7 years is the least. We're talking about an average. There are lots of women I know. My father passed away 20 years ago, so my mother's around alone for 20 years after that. So it may not even be 5 to 7 years, and then you're living on a pension or you're living on savings. So women have no escape from thinking about finances. By and large, women tend to do decisions like, here's my gold, son is not getting and needs money to pay for his MBA, so, take my gold. Husband runs into a bit of problems, take my gold. Sometimes even for holidays, somebody is throwing a tantrum and they'll say, okay, I'll break a gold bangle and go and have a nice time. I think you have to start thinking again about whether that is what you want to do, because it leaves you vulnerable at a time when you're really going to need the money, and there is not only your living expenses that you have to take care of, but medical emergencies, and those costs are pretty high at that time. Income differences. Now this is again an interesting thing. Even women who work, okay, unless you're in a government job where the Constitution of India guarantees you parity, by and large women in the private sector will tell you that they work twice as hard as the guy doing the same job, but end up getting less money, less promotions, or they are not given a post and they are said, they're told, it happened to me, instead of giving me the job of business editor, they first tried to tell me that, we depend on you, but we won't call you business editor. So we will call you something else, maybe deputy business editor or assistant business editor, because they don't want to give me the job. I'm sure it happens to everyone. I threatened to leave and then they finally gave it to me. But it doesn't always happen. Women accept, they make compromises, they think it's too pushy to go and negotiate salaries, and so you end up earning less. Lots of women, including professional women, including doctors and engineers, quite often give up their careers for 5 to 7 years because their children are growing and they're small. So you essentially step off the rat race. You may come back, okay, but you don't come back at the same positions. And in the last 15, 20 years, you've noticed that anybody who's 40 is considered over the hill. This applies to men also. If you've not reached the top of the pyramid, you have not become a CEO, you're not on the upwardly mobile path, then you end up having to leave your job and go elsewhere. Now, if this happens to men, you can imagine how much more difficult it is for women. Women are happy at that stage to even come back into the workforce, because they say, okay, I took 5, 6, 7 years off. I'm lucky I'm getting to work. And companies want people like that, because they want people who are non-competitive, non-threatening, still competent, intelligent, going to do a good job. So you have a job. You don't have a career at that stage, which means what? You're earning less. Right? So you're always satisfied with less. You're a homemaker, you're devoting all your life to your family, but apart from some amount that you may save from your housekeeping expenses, you don't have a separate income. Even if you're in the workforce, if you've taken a break, you don't have the same money that somebody else would, even when they're equally qualified. And that is why you need to be even more careful about handling your finances. This is a quote from a book, okay? It says that it's irresponsible of husbands to keep such a tight control on the family's investments that the wife will be completely unfamiliar with them after he's gone. And I think, look around you, each one of you know women in this situation, right? So my sons will take care of me, which essentially means everything is transferred to them. Even a simple thing like a home nomination doesn't go to the wife first, because people think she's incapable of handling it, so the nominee will be the son, which means that the woman is left to the mercy of the family. If they look after her well, that's a lottery. If they don't, bad luck. I mean, a lot of women end up being dumped in Kashi, or the better ones in some old people's home. There is this book which is written by Mrinalini Deshmukh. I'm sure you've heard of her. She handles all the star divorces. Very interesting point that I read over there, that 90% of divorce cases, the entire discussion is only about money. Okay, so if you are in a great marriage, wonderful. If something goes wrong, believe me, it is money that is going to account for 90%. Anyone knows anybody going through this kind of situation at the moment? A breakup, a divorce? It's happening increasingly in India, okay? I mean, especially younger people. I have several friends and colleagues, youngsters who joined, and within 3 years, you heard that they've got married and they've got divorced also. And there are significant consequences to this financially, and I don't mean about fighting over your money, okay? I'm going to come to that later, but they have to understand what it's going to mean to their financial life, and I think this is a good book, worth reading, because it's like a textbook. It's well written, it's not written like a textbook, but everything that you would want to know if you are in a bad situation is out here with some sensible advice on how to handle it. Finally, like I said in the beginning, that if you care about your families, even for that, you need to understand finance, because you're the one who is watching mistakes happen in front of you. It could be about credit cards, it could be about investment in Ponzi's, but smart women stop their loved ones from committing financial blunders, and this is important. Now, I'm going to start with the investment part, okay? Let's start with what Warren Buffett says. He's a legendary investor, safe, sensible investment. He has a whole lot of sensible things to say, but one of these applies to every one of us, which is, if you can't understand it, don't do it. Just stick to that, and you will be surprised at how much of losses you will avoid. And the losses can be huge, because we spend a lot of time talking about how your money should compound, whether you're putting money in FDs and losing money to taxes, does it beat inflation or not, and all this will have minute 45-minute discussions with financial advisors. But then you will go and make that one mistake because somebody called you and said, don't worry, auntie, whatever, friend in office, and I'm going to take care of your money, and you're going to make a huge amount, and there goes 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs. I mean, then it's down to zero. We're not even talking about an interest rate on it. And large chunks of savings go out like that. So always important to remember this one line. If you can't understand it, stay away from it. So like I said, key is not to lose money. And the key is to think about safety first, investments side by side. So insurance, nomination, and wills are 3 areas that I'm going to talk about. But first, let's look at what we all do with our money. Okay, the first thing we do is banks. And nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone talks about esoteric investments, but I always keep telling people that I know plenty of fund managers, heads of finance companies, who tell me that they will trade in, esoteric derivatives for the company, but when it comes to their own money, it's in bonds and fixed deposits. They don't trust anything else. So if you have your money in a bank FD, nothing to be ashamed of. It is definitely safe. Now, what do you do to ensure that it's safe? We tell people we are lucky. 65% of the banking system is still nationalized banks, so which means Sarkar takes care of it. Even when they have eroded their net worth completely, your money is safe. Okay, I think this situation, I'm not sure how long it will continue, but as long as you have nationalized banks, this is going to happen. Private banks, you get an SMS saying ICICI has run out of money and we all run to the ATMs. Nothing is going to happen. You don't need to do it, because everyone in the world follows a policy that it's too big to fail. You can't allow the economic impact, so it gets bailed out. Forget about ICICI Bank. Something which was 1/10 the size, which is Global Trust Bank in 2002, got merged with the Oriental Bank of Commerce, right? So they did not allow it to fail. So large private banks have a safety in the largeness. Okay, by and large, if you take care to watch their stock prices once in a while, you know that they're okay, because you're looking at the performance. The biggest barometer is that you start seeing prices dwindling suddenly, you have to be careful. What we really warn people about is cooperative banks. Okay, cooperative banks are under dual regulation, RBI as well as the government. These fail with extraordinary regularity. I don't know whether you all track press releases that come from the RBI, but at least one a month is being shut down, and this is shut down usually 2 years after its net worth is eroded, because that's the amount of time it takes for all the political haggling that goes on behind the scenes, and a final decision is taken to wind up the bank. So we tell people 1 lakh today is under a deposit insurance guarantee. Do you know that in the last 5 years, the only money paid out in this deposit insurance is on account of cooperative banks? And that's 1 lakh. So if you have a reason like it's right next door, it's convenient, make sure you don't keep more than 1 lakh. Okay, the rest of it, take the trouble to go to a bigger bank, but don't keep more than one. We don't advise it. especially when it's hard-earned money. There are lots of other reasons why people bank with cooperative banks. One of them is the very fact that their systems are not good. They're ready to do a lot of adjustments, for want of a better word. So this is not for people whose money is hard-earned and legitimate. If it is that money, keep it in a good bank. Relationship managers. Now, this is something that started about 15 years ago, and all of us felt very thrilled when people started calling us to say, I'm your relationship manager, can I come and meet you to understand your investment needs? Okay? I mean, I'm sure the more older of us are used to systems where you wait in a queue for the teller to take notice of you before he gives you your cash. And here's somebody saying, you know, you needn't even come to the bank to withdraw money. We'll do it for you. So we were really thrilled until it's taken 10 years to realize that relationship managers work to a terrifically stringent target, okay? And as far as you are concerned, they only look at you as this entity that is going to give them commissions to meet their targets. I think they're mentally conditioned because, you know, you meet them outside their job function, they're really nice human beings. But when they're coming and meeting you and turning on the charm as relationship managers, you are just a faceless entity from whom they're going to look at how much of other services they can sell to you and how much of their commissions are going to go up. So don't hold it against them. It's part of their job. They will win your confidence. They see women as soft targets. We say, come home, we make a cup of tea, give it to them, and they're finding out ways in which to take out your money, okay? They push you into buying all kinds of things. I don't know whether you experience this. It happens to me all the time. I go to open a fixed deposit. If I take the trouble to go to the bank, I mean, I'm 100% it happens because I'm a woman. They just assume that I'm born without a brain, okay? So I'm sitting there, and they will, you know, they're looking into your computer, they're all coming behind, and they look at the fact that you have a lot of savings, and they start telling you, why are you putting it in an FD? So I've gone to renew my FD, or I've gone to open an FD, and and their face is like, they're so confident, and they're looking at you as though you're some kind of cretin who doesn't know anything about money. And they say, but why this? So when I say, listen, I don't want advice, I've come to open an FD, do that, they'll say, at least put it in the housing finance company, you'll get 1% more. So I say, okay, explain to me, why are you paying me 1% more when I'm putting money in your bank for, there must be some risk attached, right? And they'll start vanishing. And I don't know whether you know this story, but the Securities and Exchange Board of India turned really stringent, and they waged a war on these unit-linked insurance plans because apparently one of the executive director's wives went to a bank and she went to open an FD, and they convinced her that she should get a unit-linked insurance. And they said that you're going to get your 8% or 9% on this max, and you will get 15, 20, they say whatever comes to their mind, okay? They say you'll get a guaranteed return. And she did that, and she came back, and her husband was livid. He said, but you went to open an FD. And he said, I think this is the limit. So when it happens to them, that's when you have changes, and people, you know, start looking at mis-selling of financial products. When organizations like ours are doing it day in and day out, believe me, it takes a long time for any of the regulators to act. But this is what happens. Women are soft targets. Okay, so they'll push you to buy things. They'll push you. If nothing else, they'll say, at least buy gold from here. You know, you're going to get a 24-carat purity, which you will not get from your local jeweler. So you have to watch out for it. You go to a bank, go for a banking transaction, go for a locker, and tell them. And even for lockers, please remember, they're not supposed to ask you to open a fixed deposit. They're not supposed to ask you to buy an insurance product. You must complain. And what the Reserve Bank of India has done these days is they have a very nice and clear system of complaints. Now, I find people come here and say, I have a problem with this bank and that bank. When I ask them, have you written a complaint? 99% will say no. But you complain at the branch level, it has to be taken on record. A month later, if you haven't heard from them, you escalate it. Today, like I'm on Bank of Baroda's Services Committee, okay? Every single complaint that comes to them has to be put before us. And there is action that is taken if the complaints are not escalated. And this applies to all banks. And what the RBI has done is they've said, we don't expect everybody to go to the banking ombudsman. So complain at your branch level and it will be taken note of. Now, if you have done it and you've not heard from them, I think come and tell us, because we will take it up really strongly. But believe me, it works. 80% of the time, you will not need to do anything else. Put it in writing, and the branch will resolve the issue, because they are answerable to the RBI. And RBI is one regulator which is taking this customer service business pretty seriously. And the problem is that we have been conditioned to think, yahan pe kuch nahi hota hai. It's a national bank, nothing's going to happen. So we don't complain, but it works. You know what happens with relationship managers? This is a classic example. Sucheta Krishnamurthy is the singer and actress. I'm sure you've all heard of her. She was speaking at this open house of Moneylife. Okay. She got a divorce. So she got 4 crores as a divorce settlement, 3.6 to be precise. Now, who knew about it? She didn't put it on page 3. Okay. So who knew about the fact that she had this big fat amount that's come into her bank account? She's shattered. She's emotionally disturbed. She's not in a position to broadcast the fact that she's feeling rich. So who knew about it? The bank. Okay. So the bank knows about it, looks at the money and says, oh, nice target. Okay, so 2 guys with ties and suits go to her house and say, ma'am, you have this huge amount lying in a savings account. Don't you want to invest it better? And she thinks, wow, how nice, you know, they're so considerate. I'm feeling so emotionally disturbed. They're coming home to tell me what to do. Okay, so she needs to buy a flat. She had the money. You know, in this amount you can get it. She needed savings. She had a daughter. So they told her, don't use part of this corpus to buy a flat. Instead, buy unit-linked insurance products. You will get a 24% return, and take a loan for your flat, and you can use this 24% return to pay the EMI. I mean, look at how many products that they have sold to her which are a blunder. Okay, so she gets a loan which she doesn't need. She's paying interest that she doesn't need. They told her it's a tax saving. 24% is completely fake. She is not going to get it. She didn't get it. Then they told her to put the remaining money in mutual funds, and they said that it was a wealth management program, and they said, we will manage it for you. We have done, you know, we've gone through her portfolio and we found this straight loss of 35 lakhs in churning it. Now, anybody here who is a financial advisor knows, you buy and sell an insurance, a mutual fund, there's an entry load and an exit load, right? So when you start churning a mutual fund, you can imagine how many times the entry load and exit load is deducted. Forget about the interest that you earn. 35 lakhs is straight that. So she's lost over 1 crore of rupees. That means more than 25% of what she got is gone. She is fighting. Now, you know, her tragedy is that she's a celebrity. So apart from people like us who are trying to help her, and we have not made any headway, she's filed a consumer court, but everybody thinks that, you know, she's a star. So even if she gets a lawyer, he's going to fleece her. Okay, so the decision she has to make is, do I let it go, or do I lose more money by spending on lawyers for the next 10 years? Because she'll probably end up spending more. If she's got a guarantee that she'll get a compensation, she would spend that money, but it doesn't really make sense. So these are the kind of traps which, and this is something that we in Moneylife are spending so much of time fighting, because what we say is that who can you trust if not your banker? Okay? The bank has a fiduciary responsibility to keep your money safe. They are misusing it to first look at what is happening in your account. You know, if you have gone and sought out an advisor, you can choose to tell him how much you want to invest. So you can pretend I have only 50 lakhs. She wouldn't even tell him. But with a banker who's looking into your accounts, it is the kind of fiduciary responsibility that they have no business misusing. But guess what? We demanded an open house with the RBI, and we asked these questions, and we find that the RBI looks, like I said, RBI is one of the good regulators when it comes to problems with banking services. But when it comes to what they call third-party products, which is mutual funds, which would come under a separate regulator, which is SEBI, or which is unit-linked insurance products, which have their own regulator, which is the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority, they say we won't interfere. I mean, isn't this wonderful? The bank cheats you, the bank appoints a relationship manager, but the RBI is going to have a hands-off attitude. But thanks to this open house, they have finally, in their financial stability report, which is released in June, for the first time they have included sections like mis-selling of third-party products, and they warned banks that you have to report to us what you're doing to ensure there's no mis-selling, otherwise we'll be forced to take action, which means that our battle is not over, but at least we have gone 50% of the way, because RBI has acknowledged in writing that this is rampant, and it means a breach of fiduciary responsibility, and it is their job to do something. Now look at what they have done to another person. Okay, this is a 79-year-old man called Mangelal Sharma. We wrote about his story because somebody told us, one of our columnists wrote one part of his problem. This is what relationship managers do to you. So his two bank manager and the relationship manager go to his house and they tell him, uncle, there's a great product. You have all your money in fixed deposits. Here we have a fixed deposit which gives you a higher return. So he says, what is this? It's called DWS, they told him. And it was actually a Deutsche Bank wealth management product. They told him it is our branded product of the bank, and DWS stands for Development of Your Wealth Scheme. And they said it's a fixed deposit, like his existing fixed deposits, but paying more. Now, the obvious question that anyone would say is, why would you pay more in the same bank if it is exactly the same like any other fixed deposit, right? But what do you do when your banker comes home and says this? You believe him, right? Every time I think about this story, I keep wondering, would I have not believed him? I think I would have. I'm not sure. But he believed him. So he filled out a form, and on the check, they told him to write only DWS, and they kept telling him, this is how they win your confidence. Uncle, hum bhar denge. Uncle, don't worry. Hum hai na. Okay? Main hu na is a great line. So, hum hai na, we are coming to your house, you're getting everything done, nothing to worry about. He then gets his monthly statement and discovers that it was a mutual fund with a 5-year lock-in. Now, this man says, I'm 79. My wife has a knee problem. One of these days, she's going to require surgery, and I'm keeping this money aside. Why at my age would I lock anything for 5 years? Okay? And he says, I'm not a fool that I've kept my money in FDs. How dare these guys come? So he went and filed a complaint. He went all the way to the banking ombudsman. And like I told you, the banking ombudsman took the attitude, it's a third-party product, it's a mutual fund, not regulated by them. They looked at only one thing. Did he sign or didn't he sign? Yes, he had signed. Okay? He had signed the form, so they said sorry. So this man did something else, which most of us don't have the guts to do. He printed those t-shirts, or at least one t-shirt with his photo, and what you can't see there is he's written, IndusInd Bank has cheated me, they will cheat you too. He wore this every day, went to the branch, and he used to sing and dance and do a little jig so that everybody notices him. And that's around the time we got to know about it, And we found it astonishing that this man at this age had the guts to do it, so we wrote about it. Believe me, it took exactly one day. We wrote about it, say today, next evening, they called him to the branch. One of our Delhi colleagues went along with him. There's a lot of pressure. The PR agency called up. They tried to yell at us. We yelled back. And so all that tamasha happened during the day. 11:30 at the night, the branch manager was back with a check for him saying, here it is. They wanted to put an end to the bad reputation that they would get. So this is a good news story where a little bit of Gandhigiri on his part worked, okay? And it's worth the attempt because according to me, a product that is per se missold. And today it's a 79-year-old man. Take a look around you, the number of women who have been sold unit-linked products and, worse products than this are innumerable, far more than, and they target women and senior citizens are seen as targets for, getting them to buy products which others wouldn't buy. Now, the other place that we invest in, if not a bank deposit, is an FD. I find that most people don't know the difference. There's a huge difference between a fixed deposit of, say, a nationalized bank and a fixed deposit in a private company. Okay? But if you go to an advisor, you go to those lists of things that you get, everybody will tell you, same hai, zyada milta hai wahan pe. No, there's a big difference because private FDs are unsecured. Okay, and in the last few days, we've got letters from any number of companies, Garware, then there is the Yash Birla companies. Suddenly, the company stops paying. Nobody's answering the phones that they have in the list, and with the bad economic situation, this is increasing. You must remember there's a huge difference, and when it comes to FDs, which are of private companies, they're called corporate FDs, the higher the interest someone is paying, the more you have to worry. Okay? Because if the difference in the interest rate is significantly higher than what is being paid on your 3-year bank FD, then it definitely means that that company is not able to raise money any other way, And the only way it can raise money is by paying that much more, which means that it is more risky. And if the company goes into liquidation, on paper it's all very well. The company will go into liquidation, assets are secured or whatever, but you're the last in the queue when the assets are distributed. And believe me, most companies take away everything. I mean, look at the great Vijay Mallya, right? Even his big yachts and planes have already been hypothecated, and he's got them on 1 month leases, and he's pretending to be as rich as he was. So it happens with every FD. They stop paying when there is no other way. So it's not the same. Insurance. Okay, this is another safety mechanism. Everybody says, I've got insurance. Is that enough? In fact, when you're doing investments, what people tell you is buyer beware. Okay. Now, of course, new theory is after a global financial crisis, finally the world is listening to people like us who are saying it should not be buyer beware. There has to be a regulator who does the work for us. Okay. He has to look at the product and say whether it's good or not for you. Is it going to be toxic? Is it going to be damaging to your wealth on the face of it? Then the regulator should look and, not allow that product to hit the market at all. But it wasn't like that until now. In fact, the situation until now was that even if it's an IPO, guy can say, yes, I have murdered people. Or there is a classic IPO about somebody who says he's going to make aircraft, but the aircraft will have no wings, and he's got a small disclosure somewhere to say one doesn't know whether they'll fly or not. Okay, but he raised money, but he had disclosed it. So it's disclose and be damned. So you can say, I guess I've committed murder, which means that I'm the CEO, but I could be spending my next 21 years in jail. I mean, it's the kind of thing that everybody said when Sanjay Dutt went inside, right? So all the film producers knew that the case was going on, but they got him in their films. And after the verdict is against him, they all go crying to the Supreme Court saying that, hey, we're going to lose money. But you bet on him, right? So it used to be like that with the IPOs. The risk was all yours. In insurance, it's just the opposite. Okay, think about it. You buy the insurance. Everyone's going to give it to you. You want to do a medical test, or you fudge it, you get a doctor to sign, you don't disclose that you had a heart attack, you don't disclose that you have hypertension and diabetes. Nobody really stops you. You'll get your insurance. What happens when you make a claim? That's the time they take a magnifying glass and start looking at it. So it's the exact opposite. You've been paying your premiums, and God help you if it is a unit-linked insurance product, because the amount that you're paying per month is huge. So insurance is the only product that is meant for contingencies. On the other hand, it's one of the most dangerous products. We have, for the first 2 years that Moneylife was around, we actually, 1.5 years, I think, we didn't touch insurance because none of us were confident about knowing enough to be able to do it. But now we have somebody who is an expert. We've done 15 cover stories. We've got a free helpline. So, there's not much I can say. Insurance can take 4 days to cover. But remember, if you have an insurance issue, please make use of the free helpline. And in fact, there's a whole lot of, I think, 15 people who have written to us in the last week or so, who've all been missold a product by a company called AB Capital, who told them, you take Reliance Insurance and you're getting an interest-free loan. So people have taken loans to buy the insurance because they're expecting an interest-free loan. And obviously, once the insurance is bought, they stop talking. And I think we've got 15 people their money back in just about a week. So take advantage of the helpline. It's for you. Now, I say insurance cheats you, right? So take a look at what happens here.
अच्छा, एक बात बताइए, कितने का इंश्योरेंस करवाऊं?
50 लाख, 60 लाख, कुछ भी बोल दे, सोच मत, बोल दे।
सर, आपकी जरूरत के हिसाब से फिलहाल 25 लाख का इंश्योरेंस काफी है।
All of you have seen this ad? So you know what happens. For a long time we used to say you get cheated by agents, and then we said, here's Max telling you exactly what goes on. So, get something for your wife, get something for your son, stuff that you absolutely don't need, and you end up losing huge chunks of your money. Okay, so insurance is not an investment. It's money for unforeseen contingencies. India is one of the most uninsured countries because all of us believe we are living khuda bharose, or we think that if you've not been able to make a claim, the money is wasted. It's not wasted. You should thank God that you've not made a claim any given year, but you need a basic insurance. So don't go for unit linked thinking you're getting money. Go for plain vanilla insurance which is going to be useful for you. One of the things that you should not listen to when you're buying insurance, do you know, Sachin Tendulkar is God, okay? So when it comes to cricket, please watch him, be a great fan, but don't listen to him when he tells you what is good for your child. Because child insurance, this ad, according to a financial advisor that we know, he says an entire village, every single person bought this child plan. Okay, because they've been looking at the ads and they say, well, Sachin Tendulkar is there, and it was so easy for the agent to sell it to them, because what does it say? It says that if the person who buys the policy for the child dies, then the child gets the money. Okay, this is fantastic. But how many times does it happen that you buy the policy and you die before the child turns 21? Doesn't happen. Small percentage. What happens to the rest of the people where the policyholder survives the term of the policy? Do you know that in the first 2 years for some of the better policies, 98% of the money goes as costs and charges taken away by the insurance company. 2% is invested by them in the first 2 years. And then the amount keeps increasing. At the end of the term, you get so little money that you would have been better off to just take a fixed deposit and ensure that it gets properly compounded. You would probably have more money. So if you're buying insurance, don't get swayed by celebrities. Second ad, okay? This is Amitabh Bachchan. Brilliant, I'm a great fan. But if he's at the airport telling security guards that like Maggie noodles takes 2 minutes to buy insurance, it's a whopping lie, okay? Let me tell you, somebody I know from Goldman Sachs has 3 children, called an agent home to decide what policies to buy. After hearing all the options and spending an hour and a half, he said, my head is reeling, leave the papers, I need to think about it. Now, if this can happen to a brilliant finance guy from Goldman Sachs, you and me buying it like this 2 minutes because Amitabh Bachchan says so, what does he know and what does he care as long as he's getting his endorsement? So go and watch his movies, don't listen to him for insurance. Now here's a third one, okay? Another brilliant actor, right? So what does he tell you? Kam insurance lene ki bimari, right? So we did some homework and we said, let's check this policy and see how much do they pay out, because they want you to buy more insurance, right? We find that they had the worst claims ratio, so they do not pay. Now, this is something that you have to look at. You have to look at what is it that your insurance company is doing. Is it paying out, or is it harassing the hell out of you? Is it taking a magnifying glass and finding stupid reasons to reject your claims? How are you going to know this? Obviously, it's difficult. You have to read some good book on finance. I keep saying otherwise, read Moneylife. We have cover stories on each one of these. Most of it is free on the website. So please take a look at it. Use helplines. They're also free. They're non-partisan because we don't hawk any products. And, none of these guys advertise with us. So you don't have to worry that we're going to tell you something wrong because of advertisements either. This is another classic example. It happens to people like us. This guy is a ticket collector retired and went to Sholapur, okay? He's in the railways. And he's like barely literate. Why do I give the example in a seminar for women? Lots of women are in the same position as him because they've taken no interest in finance all their lives, whether or not they're literate and educated. And this guy doesn't even know the difference. He says he calls everything LIC. So he's actually going to an ICICI insurance and he's going to Reliance Insurance, but he says LIC chahiye. Why? He's got 2 wives. He's got 6 children, and he knows that he's got this little nest egg after he's retired from the railways, and lovely intention of taking care of all of them. So he's watching the ads and says, LIC sabke liye liya, so they're all going to be safe. Okay, so he first goes to ICICI. Apparently they took him for a ride, or he figured out that it's not the right thing. Then he went to Reliance. Reliance nicely conned him to the extent that they sold him policies. One of his wives, who's illiterate, they even put a fake PAN number in her name, her signature, witnesses with no details, because the law says that if you are not literate, then you have to have a witness who will say the terms of the policy were read out to you and you understood them, and he's supposed to sign and give his details. So that was fake. PAN cards were fake. So it was not just a question of fooling him, there was complete forgery and mis-selling over there. And 12 lakhs is all tied up. Okay? Okay, then he figures out, he goes to somebody, Jagrut Nagrik Manch, then he comes to us, we take it on really aggressively, and what happens, he gets his money back thanks to the pressure that we wrote to IRDA. He gets his 12 lakhs back, but there is absolutely zero action against the company. The same company, I mean, what am I telling you about AB Capital and buy insurance and you're getting an interest-free loan? It's the same company. So and it's not for nothing that I'm putting this was a cover story, okay? And apart from one line of wishy-washy response, they had nothing to say. They quietly paid the guy, and they are free to cheat you all over again because our regulators simply will not act. And we've been pursuing them to say, you know, forgery, I think most of you would know, it's a non-bailable offense under the IPC. So I keep saying that if as an individual you forge something, the cops will have no hesitation in arresting you and putting you behind bars. But the minute a bank or a company does it, they get away scot-free. And they got away scot-free all over the world. This is exactly the questions that people in America are asking their regulators. What on earth did you do? And why is it okay for an institution to commit crimes like forgery and cheating? And why does the same Indian Penal Code or the American Penal Code not apply to them? But sorry, that is the reality. Welcome to the real world. That is why you need to come here and attend seminars on financial literacy, because if you were not, you would find a story like this hard to believe. Because you would find it hard to believe that this company has got away with it. In fact, every time I do this in a public presentation, people say, didn't they sue you? I say, forget about suing us. They've given us a 2 lines wishy-washy thing which is there in this story. They haven't even tried to defend themselves because they know what they've done. Now, one of the things that very few people know about is this Married Women's Property Act. Okay, under the Act, you yourself can buy this insurance, or your husband can buy this insurance. Any insurance, it's not one particular. You just have to say that you're buying it under this Act, under Section 6 of this Act. Okay. Now, here's a story which it's a true story. Guy who had large borrowings, was in business, and this is especially useful for people who are from business families because the risks are higher. He suddenly passes away and all the creditors start hounding him. Luckily, the guy had the foresight to have bought a fairly hefty insurance in the name of his wife. You know, the law says that you can't, I mean, a lot of people don't like this insurance because there's nothing you can do to change the beneficiaries once the beneficiaries are there. Okay. It forms an automatic trust without having to go under the Trusts Act. So a lot of people say that under a will, you know, people make trusts, especially for children who are differently abled or are not going to be able to take care of themselves. It's easier to do this by just taking this policy, and it becomes an automatic trust, and the beneficiaries can't be changed. No term of the policy can be changed. This policy can't be hypothecated. There can't be a loan against it. Nothing can be done. The policy holder can only pay the premium. So it is the safest way. No tax authority can attach this property. No court or creditor can attach the money, the benefits that you get under this policy. And yet every insurance company tells us that there is so little awareness about it and very few people take it. So it's something that it's worth all of you, especially those who have husbands and are dependent on them, who are in high-risk areas. Okay, now we come to signatures. The reason I talk about this, say the 5 most dangerous words are tell me where to sign. Don't we all do it? And all of us do it. And I'm not saying no. Lots of things. The government has created a system where it is almost impossible for us to understand and look at everything that we sign. So I'm not saying that, you know, I'm one person who reads every single document from beginning to end. I would do nothing else in life, you know, especially when we are running a company. But at least be aware of certain things that are going to be dangerous over a period of time. One is simple, when you're buying insurance or whatever. Key area where you're going to sign without thinking is, say, a home loan. Okay? I know a lot of women who will say, I'm not buying the loan, but they tell you to become a co-applicant. So you're just signing it, right? So what is the meaning of a co-applicant? Now the bank knows that you're earning no money, right? So why involve you at all? Why are you being made a co-applicant? So remember that anything that you put your signature to has consequences. So nobody asks you to sign on anything unless there is a consequence. And why are you a co-applicant? Simple reason that something happens to the person who is a borrower. Suppose he has no insurance on it. It will not allow you to claim that, you know, I'm going to be destitute, I'm going to be without a house, because they have involved you from the beginning as a co-applicant. So you have to be aware, anything that makes you sign, you must remember good legal brains are working for the institutions that are lending money, and they are not wasting their time getting a signature for nothing. I'll give you some examples of what happens when we sign or we trust blindly. Okay, these are all true stories told to us by women who are fighting for people in family courts, right? So this woman was a nurse called Sheila, and she, you know, the private nurses earn a lot of money, and it's all cash, because, you know, they do a 12-hour shift and they're paid cash. So she earned a good amount of money, came from a broken home, met this guy who was a part-time singer, artist kind of thing, and she married him. He used to have money occasionally, which he spent on himself. Her salary, dutifully, whatever she earned, apart from the daily kharcha, she was giving it to him. And he said, I have a bank account, let me start putting the money there. When they collected enough, bought a house. The minute they bought a house, now since the bank account was his, obviously the house was bought in his name, right? So he signed the checks, paid for it, and within months after getting the house, threw her out. And her lawyer tells us, she came and did a lecture for us, there was absolutely no way to prove that this money was earned by her. And they spent 7 years fighting the reverse to say that, you know, tell him to show us where would her money go. Because she was working, they managed to get the people whom she worked with to say that this is what she had worked for so many months or years with different people. And I don't think she got justice at the end of it, but 7 years ago when the lady came and spoke to us, she was fighting 7 years with no recourse. This is another strange one, okay? This is a girl called Padma, smart. She's working as an accountant, so you would think she knows and understands money. This is a case that I personally know about. Husband was a contract employee with a bank, and which means that he didn't have a steady job, and which means that nobody is going to give you a home loan against that money. So they decided that they're getting married, they're buying a flat, back of beyond, small place, and it's in her name because she has a steady job. So the bank says, okay, post-dated checks from her will do. And then they decide that when they pull their money together, they don't have enough to get a loan, because obviously they're not counting what the husband's earning. So her father-in-law tells her, why don't you take the loan in his brother's name? I mean, I have not heard of anything more bizarre than this, which means that you and your husband are going to earn, are going to repay, but the flat that you have is going to be in the name of an uncle. I mean, you know, it's a statistic that everybody knows that 60 to 75% of all murder, rape, cheating happens by people around you. So to take a bet that you're going to pay something over 10, 15 years and you'll buy something in the name of a brother because you think, after all, it's an uncle, is the kind of bizarre financial decisions that women make, okay? And this girl had agreed to it because, you know, father-in-law is saying it, husband saying it. How do you say no? She's newly married, but it's about your future. You have to have the guts at that time to step up and say, I mean, I think she just turned really lucky because that flat that they were buying had a problem. So they paid money, we helped her fight and get that money back, but she wasn't getting a loan on it because some of the documents submitted by the builder were illegal, and we used our police contacts and whatever and got her money back. And the next time she was buying it, I said, don't you dare, you know, I'm going to see what you're going to do. Make sure that you're taking the loan in your own name. And that's what she did next time. I mean, happy ending, purely by chance. Otherwise, for the next 10 years, they would be paying back a loan and the flat is not even in their name. Can you imagine how much they would have to beg and plead to get that guy to transfer the flat to their name? Not to mention all the stamp duty and registration all over again. But people are doing this, and they're doing it here. This is an even more horrific one, again a true story. This was told to us again at a Moneylife seminar by a Citibank public relations person. She talks about this lady called Meena and her husband, very high profile, guy is doing brilliantly, they have 2 kids, and no, this is a different one. This is about, again, EMI itself, where 2 of them are working, buy the place together, parents are going to live with them, so the husband convinces her that why don't we take the loan in such a way that I pay for the home expenses and you pay the EMI. So it seemed like a fair deal, because he said he's going to pay more for the house because his parents are also going to stay there. And 75% of her salary went as an EMI. Within 6 months after they moved to the place, they threw her out of the house. Okay, and she was spending her time in court, so she's working, she's getting only 25% of her pay. She did the rounds of running to the housing finance company and said, I'm not staying there, I've been thrown out, I filed a case. But they don't listen, because nobody wants a non-performing asset in their book. So they said, we sympathize, but we are really sorry, there's nothing we can do. So again, this is a case that I know that at the time we got to know of it, it was being fought in court, no recourse. And this is something which I'm sure each one of you knows, youngsters who are getting married. The first thing that everybody wants is to buy a place of their own and get a home loan, right? I mean, this is the kind of blunders that youngsters are making. And it doesn't stop at this. If the marriage fails, there are huge consequences to both sides, even in terms of what happens to your credit history. But I'm going to come to that later. So I'm saying it's something that you just simply cannot ignore. So essentially, all these are emotional traps. Why do women get trapped? Because you've been conditioned not to speak up, not to ask too many questions about how the family wealth is managed. And it is worse, believe me, in joint families, because when the elder of the house, doesn't matter whether they know modern finance or not, right? So there are, because the key issue is, were you of sound mind or not?
But if we get the doctor's signature, that at that time,
ifs and buts. I mean, a hypothetical situation. We don't know whether you're going to be in sound mind, whether you're going to have dementia or what. So I would say, be careful.
No, but we get a doctor's signature that.
If you're fine, there is no issue. You can get a doctor's signature, you can get a lawyer's signature, there's no problem.
What is the example you gave of, say, somebody, one child is in India and taking care of the parents, and the 3 are overseas, and so therefore the 4th one is most, deserving of it. Can those 3 overseas contest?
Yeah, very much, and they do. I mean, and you've seen that the richer they are, they come
more
and fight.
Demand. Yeah. So in that case, registration is probably a better.
Absolutely, and that's why I said that it differs from situation to situation. And I'm telling you that while I'm standing here and holding a seminar for women can be pretty nasty also. Because one true story that I heard is where the parents lived with a son, and there were 3 sisters, and the father had provided enough and more for the 3 sisters, and kept refusing to make a will right to the last moment, because he said, anyway, this is for the son. Anyway, the flat is for the son. And everybody knew it. And he passed away, and all the 3 sisters made a claim and put him through hell. So women can, and misuse of various laws to protect women are happening. But those percentages are pretty small as compared to the large number of women that still get exploited.
Ma'am, I was saying that she is 15 years, she is not staying with her husband. She can definitely, it's as good as annulment of marriage, because law says that if you are not staying separately, it's as good as the legal document as far as she is concerned. If it is not there, still creditors cannot hold her responsible. That's what I was trying to tell.
I know, I'm agreeing with you. All I'm saying is that
plus there is a limitation act also, ma'am.
No, but she'll have to go and fight all that out now. I mean, maybe are you a lawyer?
Yes. I've done masters in law.
What happens with all the lawyers is this. They're going to court every day. They think it's a small thing. For the rest of us, where going to court is such a big burden, you want to do everything to avoid that situation. So, for you, it'll be just one case and another 15 minutes of your time. But for her, it'll be spending days and days to make that point, to prove that, she was not living with him. She'll have to produce endless documents. I mean, she's not for 15 years. I think some simple precautions, she should not put herself in that position at all. That's all I'm saying.
About the will part, supposing in the will you will have to prepare your own assets, fixed and non-fixed and whatnot. It takes a long time. But we are both senior citizens. So if in every account or every demat account or in every property that belongs flat, etc., if you put a nomination that is equally good, isn't it?
Yeah. It takes care of 80 to 90% of your problem. So we keep saying whether you make a will or not, if you have your nominations right, everywhere. Yeah, everywhere if you have your nomination done, 80% of your issues solved.
Now about the TDS certificates, are the banks supposed to give it us every quarter, or are they supposed to send it home? Because many times they give it by the middle of the June, and then it's become difficult, to calculate the taxes, etc.
They all give it in June. See, two things are happening on. They are supposed to send it. I think what is happening quickly is that the law is, it's a long fight, okay? Everyone's been fighting about what banks do about TDS. And I was horrified last week when I went to meet the chairman of the Banking Standards Codes Commission, who's a former chairman of Canara Bank and Allahabad Bank, where when I started telling him the problems that people have with TDS, he started telling me stories about how his own daughter had lost her TDS and his own bank said we can't do anything, right? So we are in fact fighting that with the RBI, and we are saying that two things happen. Even when you fill the form which says that you're not liable to taxes, they still deduct TDS. They don't give you the certificate in time. So we are saying banks have to become more liable. So RBI, it moves very slowly. So step by step it started doing things. One is that it's made it easier for TDS to be sent off to people. So it's all automated now. Second, it is allowing you to go and look at it online. So again, it's a process, but it's there. And the third is where they never gave you an acknowledgement, they're now giving you an acknowledgement. So three things that they have done. But if your particular bank is not giving you in time and it's creating problems, please write and complain. Okay, because these complaints are taken note of, and at least they'll make sure that you don't have a problem.
Does the nominee become a custodian of funds or the finances, or just or an owner?
See, technically he is a custodian of the finances and not the owner, okay? But invariably, in more than 90% of the cases, people, and I think if people put somebody as a nominee when they don't want him to ultimately become the owner, it's a mistake that they're making. So we tell people, make sure that the nominee is someone where you don't mind the money going to him. So don't make your neighbor the nominee when you want your wife and children to inherit. So make sure that the nominee is the right person, where if something happens and he gets the money, you have no objection to it. But legally, the nominee is only the custodian, and the will prevails, and if the will says something to the contrary, then the nominee is supposed to give it. But you know how it is with cash. So you've got 10 lakhs in the bank, the guy's taken the money, he's gone on a foreign trip and blown it up, you'll spend another 15 years fighting with him to get it back. So you have to ensure that the nominee is someone who can get the money. We'll move on. So simple thing about identity theft, anybody who uses a bank account, uses a credit card, a debit card, has to be aware of how easy it is these days to become a victim of identity theft. And especially if you're going to take a mobile phone, the reason why I have special emphasis here is that a lot of women depend on somebody else to do all the paperwork. So they will give the papers to someone and say, you go and do the KYC and you come and give it to me. And this is dangerous. This is a story in Mumbai Mirror where this woman told her nephew to get a SIM card for her. He got 2 with the same documents, ran up a bill of 52 lakhs, making calls to porn lines, if you please. And the woman gets chased by recovery agents. She gets arrested. Luckily for her, the police, realize that she doesn't seem to know anything about that number which is in her name. And they believe her. Then they finally sit and grill her and say, who got the phone for you? Because she was that illiterate. She worked as a domestic maid. Okay? And she then said, the nephew. So when they gave him the 3rd degree, he confessed that he had got 2 cards and he had run up this bill. I mean, it's a horrific story because it's such a huge bill. I don't even know whether he understood the consequences, but it was very clear that he was quite okay with, his aunt facing the consequences. And this happens time and again. We've done stories where in ICICI Bank's case, they talked about this woman who was 75 or 76, very powerful, very connected to a senior IAS officer. And she said the money is lost from her ATM account, okay? So she files a complaint, and it was high profile enough for them to first put the money in her account and say, we'll investigate later. And when they began to investigate and they went through the tapes, they looked at which ATM the money was withdrawn from, and they looked at the tapes, they discovered that it was her own nephew. And he had come and stayed with her. He was a shippy, so he was there for exactly 15 days or something, had gone away. So she kept saying that there's nobody with me. I'm alone. There's nobody with me. And what she had done is put her ATM card along with the number nicely written in the same envelope, kept it in a drawer. And you would be surprised. I've taken up a case with the RBI of a senior journalist from the Times of India, and that couple says the same thing. We had the number, we'd kept it locked, there is nobody but the maid. And Bank of Maharashtra said, we don't care who it is, because there's a pattern to thefts, you know. It was all 3 times withdrawn from around her house, and obviously at some time that woman had got it, maybe cloned it, duplicated, because there is no way. And these people kept vouching for the domestic help. They said, she knows, we kept it in the drawer, and I don't know who's done it. But you will be surprised at how standard this is in India. People send, you know, their office assistants with the pin and say, go and withdraw my money. I mean, I've not heard of anything more dangerous, but this happens in India all the time. You go to an ICICI ATM plaza and you're standing there, you will see each other, people telling each other how to use the ATM, and they're loudly saying out the pin for the other person to put it in. We have no understanding. And it's not just debit and credit card pins. Aadhaar is another one which is even more dangerous. We are seriously worried about it, because there it's not just the pin, it's your fingerprints. And we keep saying, if something goes wrong, if it is cloned, it's stolen, you can change everything. You can't change your fingerprints. So what if your Aadhaar is compromised? The government has not yet set up a system of what to do if your, you know, Aadhaar with your biometrics is compromised, because you can neither change your iris pattern nor can you change your fingerprints. It's not like a password. You compromise a password on an ATM card, you change it, right? What do you do with the Aadhaar? And there's already so much of mischief. So I keep telling people, be careful. KYC documents, questions that they ask, everybody knows what are the secret questions that people normally ask you, right? People are very free with this information to everybody. A smart person getting all the data, including your date of birth, can easily guess, usually, you know, what is your mother's maiden name and stuff like that. It's so easy to figure out, and you have to be careful. Because like I said, everything has consequences. You know, today every transaction that you do, especially if there is a borrowing, and you may not borrow for anything, but a credit card and a debit card is seen as a borrowing transaction. It gets tracked, it gets reported, and you have what are called credit information bureaus. There are 4 of them. They track this information, and you will never get credit if you are a defaulter. Now, I keep saying that this applies to women when there are joint cards, joint accounts, joint loans. So if one party defaults, that impacts the wife also. And a lot of times, you know, in the US, it's a huge thing for everybody. What is your credit score? Are you a good borrower? It even makes and breaks marriages, because there are people who will say, I mean, I started a whole cover story on credit bureaus with this example, where 2 people went on a date, and when the woman heard that, actually the guy broke the date because he heard this woman's credit score being so low, so I don't want to have anything to do with them. Because in most economies, even us today, if you're in your 20s or your 30s, there's no way you're not going to borrow. I mean, our parents never borrowed in their lifetime, okay? But today you borrow for a home, you borrow for a car, you may take an EMI even on getting a home theater, and it's normal. It's not frowned upon, it's the easiest thing to do. But all this goes into your credit record. You even delay payments. I had a friend, I stood guarantee for her in HDFC. This is more than a decade ago. And I get a call one day saying that, you know, Sucheta, you stood guarantee for this girl and she hasn't paid for 3 months. This is just a preliminary check. Is there a problem? So I call her up and I say, is there a problem? Because I wasn't sure what was happening. I thought she'd got into trouble. And she just coolly tells me that, no, I just felt lazy to come into town. So she hasn't paid her EMI for 3 months. Will you believe it? And, you know, HDFC was so angry when they heard it. They said, usually they waive penal interest and they're fairly okay with it, especially if someone says there's a problem. So they tell me that don't call us up and say waive her interest because she's a journalist, okay? And today, that's not a luxury anymore. You delay your payments. Even by 2 days, it is docked in your credit history. You keep searching for auto loans and home loans. You've been rejected a few times. That goes into your credit history. So when the credit histories are so detailed, you can imagine what the consequences are when sometimes for no fault of yours, because somebody else is reckless, you're going to face the implications. And a lot of times I keep saying, you can get people above 35 to come and attend these seminars. You can't get the youngsters who need it most to come and attend this, because that's the age when all of us thought we know everything and we had nothing to understand and learn. So I keep saying that, you know, when I say women should take care of their loved ones, this is what I mean, that even if you know that it has implications and somebody is spending money on his credit card, just tell the person. It could be a neighbor, it could be a son, grandson. Tell them there are consequences, and believe me, that remains on your record for 7 years. And we had a seminar in Pune where one of the youngsters tells us that, you know, I heard what you're saying about credit history, but I've taken an education loan and I plan to default. So what should I do? And these are huge, these are not small. So we said, I think you need to think again, because this is going to remain on your records for 7 years, which means that you're going to finish in another 2 years. You'll probably land a great job, okay? And the next thing you want to know is, you want to buy a car, a little nano, or you want to buy a bike, and you know, it's your first reality check, because they're going to say no. In America, the number on your credit score decides. Extreme, you will not get a loan. But if you have a low credit score, they're still willing to lend to you, but at a much higher interest rate. In India, at the moment, it's black or white. If you're a defaulter, you don't get a loan. Okay? And sometimes it is, you know, you're wrongly put there also, which is another different battle. But again, there we are helping people. We have something called Disha Financial Counseling. It is free. Again, if you know of anybody who's wrongly a defaulter, or even correctly a defaulter but wants to come out of it, please tell them to come and take counseling. We have an excellent person. It's a confidential one-to-one hearing. You just have to come and take an appointment with Sarah. And Mr. Gopal Krishnan has been an assistant general manager with the RBI, and forget the qualifications and the knowledge, he's a gem of a human being, really goes out of his way. And I keep saying that those who are not taking advantage and they're going to other places and paying money to get their credit settled or getting advice, a mistake. So do spread the word on this. So quickly run through some investment traps. Again, you'd be surprised how many women fall for this. 100% money back, put it in Nifty. One woman's case that I resolved, she was 76, okay? And young chartered accountant came and told her, Auntie, she sold a flat in Kulaba. Guy comes and tells her, don't go and put your money in the bank, put it in oil futures. Because he says, itna paisa banaoge aap, auntie, aapka capital gains you don't need to worry about, okay? And this lady, I mean, those were the days when I was so stunned at how many people came to me when the oil price crashed with defaults on oil futures. I kept saying, you know, we are crying that India's equity investor population has shrunk from 20 billion to 8 million. And I said, none of us have even looked at oil derivatives and commodity derivatives. And here you are. I said, how did you put your money? So answer was simple. The guy told her, Auntie, aapko kuch nahi karna. Main sab kar dunga. Okay? So she's signing in a few places, and he would call her up every day. Aaj aapne 30% banaya, aaj aapne 40% banaya. And he would give her some statements. I said, did you look at the statements? She says, yeah. He used to put them in an envelope, and he would come and give it to me and say, aapko dekhna nahi hai. Just give it to your CA at the end of the year. Okay? And then one fine day, he stopped calling. So they thought maybe he's traveling. So then they began to wonder what is happening, why aren't we hearing from him? He wouldn't take their call. And then they discovered that he had lost 12 lakhs of their money. So this is over and above their whole investment. They were negative 12 lakhs. They had to pay the, MCX 12 lakhs of rupees. And this is when she comes and she's crying. And she's pretty rich, okay? It's not that she couldn't afford to lose the 12 lakhs. But the whole point about being taken for a ride like this, and I'm narrating this story to another senior journalist, ex-Times of India, and she tells me she herself had lost 2 lakhs in oil futures, and another of her cousin has lost 20 lakhs, and I realized that it was so widespread because people are looking at these little ads which say 100% returns. There's no free lunch, okay? So there are 2 women who came to us. One is a chartered accountant, one is a CS. I wrote about them, in fact, recently. Again, pretty rich. 10 of them went to a broker who said exactly this in 2008. They've lost their life saving of 10 crores together. Okay. And they keep saying, can't we do something? The point is, there is nothing you can do if you have lost money legitimately in derivatives. It's like going to a casino and losing. I mean, if you go to Las Vegas or you go to one of the Goa casinos, will you cry about losing? You're not going to make a claim against anybody, right? You lost it and you come out and you'll say, oh, my luck was bad. But you're not going to say, can I file a case? So the women were here to see, can they file a case against somebody or the other who's planning? So, guy is a sub-broker, he's lost it. Can't we file a case against the broker? Because they think that if you've lost money in a stock exchange, which has a regulator, doesn't matter that what you've done is the same gambling, but you think that you have a case against somebody, or you think it's safer only because you've gambled on an exchange rather than having gambled in a casino. But there is no difference whatsoever, and you lose huge amounts of money. But people take lakhs of rupees from you, conduct a 3-day session where they say they're making you an expert, then they call you in the morning and give you stock tips, and for the first few days you make money, market turns, something happens, everything is gone, okay? It's completely wiped out. There are no shortcuts. I mean, we spend all these books, half of them are on investing. Nobody wants to read. Everybody wants to say where to sign and give me a call to say I've made money. Money is not made like that. Otherwise, all of us would not be spending time here doing seminars. We would be out, on some Mediterranean island or something. So, this is another case. I'm just going to run through this. I keep calling them the Bunty and Bubbly of the market, kept changing names. 1,000 crores is what they picked up in 1 year. This is Stock Guru, okay? This is a case I say at all my seminars, City Limousine. Check how many women are in this audience, okay? They don't understand finance, but the minute someone says, I will give you 100% loan, women are soft targets for this. And we've done a lot of work on these MLMs and Ponzi schemes. Simple principle is this: anything that says returns depend on introducing 2 or more new people. Now this guy was really powerful. Shah Rukh Khan and Dilip Kumar are his great friends. He actually funded the movie Chak De India. Do you know that? I mean, the most patriotic film came from this guy. But he has half a dozen politicians. The last time I did a seminar on Ponzi's and MLMs, somebody from the Serious Frauds office was here, and they told us stuff that is not in the papers, which includes names of politicians who put money through him. He is now absconding. He's jumped bail. People are not going to get their money back. And like we keep saying, we all think that, if your neighboring policeman has put money in, he would be safe. But look at the people who have put money in City Limousine. Another insight we got from Serious Frauds offices, like Stock Guru, we know it's 1,000 crores, but the papers, when they're arrested, suddenly say 500 crores. Why? Because whatever they can recover from him is first taken by the guys in this list. Okay? If you're not here, you get 0. So sometimes they get their money back, but you don't. And principle is simple. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. Anything that offers you high returns and says get 2 or more people, it is a chain. All chain schemes in India, anything that says get, whether it's like Amway and Tupperware 963 or 642, whatever it is, or 1:1 is the most dangerous. They are all chain marketing schemes of dubious legality. They keep coming and trying to meet us to say the law should be changed managed to give them, they call themselves direct marketing. The law is very clear. The Indian law considers all of them chain marketing companies. So it includes all of them. They raise humongous amounts of money. And these are still the better ones because it's difficult, okay? People say that that can be an alternate career. So lots of women fall for this. They think it's so easy to sell Tupperware from home or Oriflame. But those who have put their money in will tell you that you don't earn enough for it to be a career. Amway has come here, and one of their, foreigners, the US guy, tells us that no, it can at the most, when it works, it can at the most supplement your income. It can't be your main source of income. But that's not how they sell it. I told you about QNet. Usually these high returns just smack of desperation. And you've heard what happened to Sharda, Rose Valley, 23 suicides, okay, in that Sharda fund. And they spend so much money on advertising to fool people. But essentially, it's common sense. Nobody is going to give you a 100% return. In Sharda, it was just 24% return. So if a bank is giving you 9, somebody is giving you 24, it is because the business is shady. Otherwise, nobody is in it for charity. And even if it's a charity, they're not going to give you that money. They'll actually give it to people who are destitute and need it, right? So one of the things we say is don't invest in unregulated offers. Not that everything that is regulated is safe, but at least you have a locus standi to go to a regulator and fight for it. So step one, make sure that you're investing only in things that have a clearly defined regulator, and definitely avoid all these plantation schemes, art funds. Today we have written about a company called Prime Securities, which has been suspended by the stock exchange. Aditya Birla company has been hard selling this portfolio management scheme, and they've lost money. Art funds, we wrote about Ocean. It's still not paid. People who came through us have got about 85-90% of their money back. That too, the ones that we wrote about in the beginning, because we were the first to break the story that the guy wasn't paying. And this was hard sold by ABN AMRO Bank. So when I keep saying wealth management, these are guys, huge, big reputations. They're hard selling you things. And I keep saying that the financial world is the only place where the bigger the reputation, they're just as bad as anyone with a small unknown name. There's absolutely no guarantee. And we keep saying that if you buy a Rolls Royce, you're getting a lot more as compared to a little Nano, okay? But if you go to a Barclays or a Citibank, and you go to your neighboring nationalized bank, or especially the ones who have string of relationship managers to hard sell you products, there is absolutely no difference based on the brand name. And I'm not saying this here, HSBC has paid huge fines all over the world. Citibank has paid them. So we are not maligning them, we're just quoting facts. So credit traps, I'm again running through credit cards, because the whole process of making you buy a credit card, do you need it? 100%. For an emergency, what will you do? You want to suddenly rush someone to a hospital, or I keep saying the best example, Kingfisher. You're standing at the airport and the flight is cancelled and the company is going downhill. And who do you turn to for money? You want to buy another ticket on another airline. You can only do it if you have a credit card, especially if you're in another city. So are credit cards important? Yes. Yet you have Scott Adams saying that they are the crack cocaine of the financial world. Why? Because people don't understand the mechanics of how it works. Okay? All of you have seen this ad, right?
Business class tickets for your parents' first international vacation? Watching your parents become children again? Priceless. There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. Accept it wherever your travels may take you.
The last bit about this ad is, everything else money can buy. The look on your parents' face, priceless. Okay? And priceless is MasterCard's most famous campaign, because the point that they're making is spend money that you don't have. And I keep saying, if the parents knew, the look on the parents' face, priceless, but if they knew this little idiot had no money, he's spending it on a card, and he's going to pay back at the rate of 40%, that look would have been really priceless, isn't it? Because I can't imagine one parent saying, get us a limousine to pick us up at the airport, when you don't have the money in your pocket, right? So interest rates are as high as this, 40 to 65%. And a lot of people have been coming to me, and before the market collapsed in 2008, there were people who were telling you, play the market based on your credit card, because you have 3-4 credit cards. You know, there is a brother and sister committed suicide with 40 credit cards that were found with them and all overdrawn, right? Because this is something that people, the smart relationship managers and the guys who are hawking these cards at the airport and malls, you know, they were telling you this, that take a credit card, you can keep rolling over your credit. Life doesn't work like that everything is on clockwork. And there is somebody here who said, but I get so much of free time. Yes, you get that free period to pay, but lots of people don't understand. First of all, none of these banks admit that they charge anything more than 18 to 21%. Okay, officially they claim that. In a case that went up to the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission, they admitted that it was as high in some cases as 68 to 72%. So I'm saying 40 to 65. Because depending on which bank, the amounts are higher. There are all kinds of charges built in that you don't know about. When you roll it over, this is where it all kicks in. Okay, so a credit card is wonderful if you pay back, the bill comes and you pay it. It's a great instrument, but the credit card company makes no money on you, so they do not like customers like you. In fact, they won't even come back to persuade you to renew the card, because they, even that little card that you have and the transactions are a cost to them. So you're not a customer they want. They want a customer who rolls over. Okay, in fact, they spend a lot of time wooing them, because that's where they make money, and the money is really big. And they persuade you to withdraw money on credit cards. They pretend it's like an ATM. It's not, because there the clock starts ticking on day one. There's no free period. They adjust that money in the end. So if you have any other outstandings, those are adjusted first. And even in a billing cycle, what people don't understand, I've seen young people get into traps like this, because you spend on a credit card, you got a job, you got a credit card, great. So you have a birthday party. Then somebody says, the real case, okay, we actually handled it at Disha. Then someone says, let's go to Goa for the weekend. So you book the ticket. It's so easy, you don't have to worry. You're going to pay it back over a period of time, it's rolled over. Now, what we say is that if you've rolled over once, don't touch that card again, because every other transaction that you do starts carrying interest from day one. There's no free period. It's not like I bought something today, so I went and bought a dress and it cost me $5,000. It's on my credit card, so it's got 60 days. 20 days later, I buy something else, it's got no. It is within a billing cycle. And the minute there's a rollover, there's no free period. Right? It just keeps adding and piling on and compounding at a very high interest rate. And this is something that nobody calculates. They'll come back and say, I just didn't pay for 2 months. And how did it suddenly sort of, go up 50% and 60%? Because that's the nature of the beast. Okay, that is the nature of the credit card business. I already told you that we offer free counseling here. So, you can get into trouble. Nobody sort of manages to go through their financial life without trouble. Come and ask for advice. It's the right time to get it. In conclusion, take interest in financial matters. That's the first. Make a financial plan. Remember that you need money well after you stop earning, whether or not you're dependent on anyone. 3 things take care of half your issues. I shouldn't say wills, nominations, and insurance. Actually, I should say nomination, insurance, and then will, in that order. Nominations is the first, insurance for contingencies, and then a will. And listen to Warren Buffett. If you don't understand it, stay away from it. Nobody else is going to take care of your money. So if someone else says, I'll earn it for you, it's not going to happen. Even if you avoid losses, even if you don't beat inflation, you're still better off, because avoiding losses is far bigger than any returns that you may get on anything else, because that takes away a big chunk of your savings. So thank you, everybody.